Hello and welcome to Doing Good While Doing Business, the podcast powered by Biggin. I'm your host Lise, and today we're tackling a central topic to South Africa's economic future and regional standing. We're looking at infrastructure, investment, and job creation. How can government programs and private partnerships really turbocharge employment, the rollout of crucial mega projects, and of course influence local and regional trade? Now, to dive into the complexities and opportunities in this area, I'm very delighted to be joined by a leading expert, Dr. Mthandazo Ngwenya, the Managing Director of Development Advisory and Impact. Mthandazo, how are you today?
Great. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
I would really like to know more about your role at Biggin. What exactly is your role in the DAI, and where does the DAI fit in Biggin?
So, Biggin was founded in 1971 and operates very strong engineering verticals. So, we are a consulting engineering firm that operates within South Africa, almost all of the provinces of South Africa, but 20 other African countries offering infrastructure development services. So, over the lifespan of the business, we've developed strong capabilities in the water sector, in the real estate sector, transport and logistics, in energy, and in infrastructure management services. And believe it or not, also in agri. The Development Advisory Directorate was created specifically to look at the aspects of the interplay of engineering and the communities within which engineering projects are implemented, and operate as a basis of ensuring that there's community participation in the rollout of infrastructure that benefits those communities. So we have communities who are participants in their own development and not only spectators and basically seeing yellow equipment and new roads being built without any of those communities' involvement. We work in a number of spaces for the engineering directorates within Biggin, for other organizations, other engineering firms, for public international organizations. We have a number of projects with the European Union here in South Africa and abroad.
We have seen that there are government stimulus or government stimuli that are currently in place, such as the 1 trillion rand that's been set aside, the EPWP, which is also known as
the Expanded Public Works Program.
Of course. And of course, I also know the BFI, which is
the National Treasury's budget facility for infrastructure.
For infrastructure specifically, yes. So with these types of government stimulus in place, what is the actual impact that we're seeing in real time, and more specifically the impact on job employment or job creation?
Yes, I think to tackle the sort of slow economic growth rate of the country and expand services to marginalized communities, there's been deliberate effort to prioritize infrastructure requirements for the country, go through within the presidency some systematic process through Infrastructure SA of saying these are the critical projects that need to be rolled out over specified timeframes. So a lot of that preparatory work was done. And the critical aspect was to fund these government projects, hence the set aside in terms of the trillion rand investment in new infrastructure, but also some of that being done through the Expanded Public Works Program, and then more recently the budget facility for infrastructure, which only looks at R1 billion and up projects in the different spheres of government. So all of these projects, on the one aspect, address the connectedness of the country in terms of railroad networks, which should improve economic efficiency. But attached to that is the real expanded jobs opportunities for first-time job seekers and also artisans, and trying to improve the overall unemployment position of the country, particularly for the youth, who you understand are approaching almost 45% levels of unemployment, which is extremely high.
Do you mind going into exactly what are the different types of jobs or specific careers that are brought about with these types of government stimuli put in place?
Also, we have a large array of skills that are being brought on. So, in partnership with the TVET colleges in the country, we look at bricklaying, welding, plumbing, and various other more technical aspects of engineering, like obviously your draftspersons, your civil engineers, your electricians, and the like. But linked to that, obviously, are also all of the other socioeconomic roles that help to roll out a full project, because there's the technical aspects, but there's also the component that relates to how the projects impact on the host communities and making sure that there's a seamless interplay between the need to create the civil infrastructure and the people impacted by its construction and ongoing existence in the host community.
In the community. So, if correct me if I'm wrong, the way I'm interpreting what you're saying is that we of course have the government as one entity on this side, and we have the community and real impact and job creation. And I suppose that Begin then sits in the middle in between these two entities and kind of facilitates that community impact. Is that correct?
Yes, because typically, if you want to create a new water reservoir or a new dam, the first thing is to have some sort of socio impact assessment.
Yes.
So, as Begin, that would probably be our starting point to be involved in the initial pre-feasibility studies, which take into account the impact of that infrastructure on the host community. Whose land is that dam going to be built on?
What are the types of communities around?
What are the types of communities around the land? What is the historical significance of that area to that host community? What are the cultural norms, traditions, value systems of that particular community need to be factored into the engineering designs?
Yes.
And what is the short and long-term impact of that infrastructure on the socioeconomic aspects that have sustained that community?
Yes.
You create an opportunity on the one aspect, but you obviously could disrupt other livelihood aspects that have existed there for generations. At an international level, it's $1 billion and up is considered as a mega project.
Great.
So in SA terms, you're talking just slightly under 20 billion rand.
Goodness.
But obviously you have to factor in the size of the economies, right? So what is a mega project in the US and what would be a mega project in South Africa? In SA, yeah, it's fairly different.
Yeah.
So in South Africa, we have 1 billion rands as sort of getting into the mega space. And I think that's why you find that a lot of the BFI financing sort of has a cap of 1 billion as being what Treasury would consider a project they would fund through that program.
Okay, so there is quite an economic aspect or factor to these mega projects. As Begin, what have you seen or what can you tell us are the major socioeconomic factors that may affect the pace or the successful execution of these much needed mega projects?
As an infrastructure development firm, we've had a lot of lessons in terms of how to smooth the implementation of projects and avoid some of those common errors that many of the projects are facing, where there is significant community resistance to implementation of infrastructure. We've had huge problems with what would be considered the infrastructure mafia, with the Minister of Public Works setting up a specialized force within his department. In fact, South Africa has nearly 64 billion rands of projects just in 2024 that could not move forward because of absolute resistance from communities, community protests, or just straight out criminality driven by construction mafias.
Oh, well, why exactly would a community be so resistant to a mega project, to infrastructure that could really benefit their quality of life?
It all comes down to the fact that there's an assumption that people will be just totally welcoming of any project, not factoring that they need to be extensive consultations with host communities before projects are actually implemented.
Yes.
So what tends to happen in many cases is people are minding their own businesses and they see the yellow equipment arriving and the graders and the tractors and fencing, and all of a sudden a whole huge contingent of people who are not from that area coming in to start doing work on their land. And there has not been sufficient explanation of what this project is about, what are the benefits for the country, for that community, and how can people who reside in that area participate meaningfully in the project. You speak about R1 billion. Many of these communities have no capacity to absorb that level of financing. So if I give you a classical example, most civil infrastructure is not in major cities. So if the central government planners set aside R1 billion to spend on a new water scheme in a small community, most of the project inputs will not be purchased from that community. So essentially,
community itself.
It's from the community itself. So whether it's the bricks, the steel, the cement, the aggregate, that would not be purchased in that particular community. Essentially, you have this big announcement that in Village X there's a big water project, but the reality is the professional services, the inputs into that project are procured elsewhere for delivery in that community. So essentially, the people who live around that infrastructure end up participating not so in a large way. And so as a consequence of that, some obviously resistance builds up towards the project, and then people start to protest. And that needs to be factored into play way before the actual infrastructure project construction starts.
So I'm assuming that this resistance can have an effect on the pace and the actual execution of these projects. So what is Biggin's then next step to mitigate this resistance?
So what we do with our projects is we have a very proactive community engagement strategy that we deploy way before many of the communities have a clearer understanding of what the project is going to be all about. We factor the inputs that we receive out of those engagements with host communities.
Are those through like surveys or actually just talking to the people?
Correct. So they are either through surveys or through direct visitations to people's homes, speaking with the traditional leadership in a particular area, ward committee chairpersons, councillors, social influencers, making sure that as much a wide view as possible or perspectives are gathered from those interactions. We then take that back into our planning and have these intense conversations with our own design engineers to factor that component that comes out of the social engagement interactions into how then the project is then designed. And what then happens is you are able to proactively set aside aspects of the delivery for host community participation, for small and medium enterprise participation, so that you have more socioeconomic impact in the host community, and people feel like while they've received this great infrastructure which will help them with clean water, with a hospital and so on, but there's also been other economic opportunities that have been created to get small contractors to come on board to work under the mentorship of larger contractors. And with 3-4 years of training, you can move small contractors to more medium contractors who can then in future tender out work in their own right. And at the same time, there's a lot of deliberate skills transfers that can take place to some of the youth in that host community, so that they, at the end of a 3-4 year period, you have graduates with TVET qualifications or engineering degrees. With experience, having also had an opportunity to work on the project. And I think that tends to then create a fairly more smooth interface between the project and its host community.
There's quite a slew of resources that really need to go into these mega projects, and I believe one of them may be a need for increased investment into these projects, because where is all these finances really coming from, right? May you clarify for us and for our listeners, what is the role of PPPs, the public-private partnerships? What is their role in really attracting the capital and the expertise to ensure that these mega projects do take place as planned?
As the level of socio-economic need on the fiscuses of African governments has grown, there's been less room for capital formation expenditure. So as a consequence of that, the pure level of financing available for governments to fund infrastructure on their own has shrunk significantly. And we see that as well in South Africa, where in fact, the social expenditure ratio on the fiscus has increased somewhat, and that leaves less room for the government to afford new infrastructure. So the private sector has taken on a huge significance in closing that financing gap, where they also see an opportunity to make a return. So the private sector is coming in through these public-private partnerships, either through concessions, new roadworks where there's tolling, or in components where they either build, operate, and then transfer based on some unitary payment system which comes out of the fiscus. But the net effect is essentially to have the private sector bringing the capital up front, and the government doesn't have to front that capital. It can service that debt to the private sector over a period of time.
So there definitely is a really important role that the PPP plays in the grand scheme of infrastructure in the country. So if I can bring your attention to the country of South Africa, what are the priorities that South Africa currently has in terms of infrastructure? Are we on track to actually meet those priorities successfully or satisfactorily? And then what is Bigen's role also with the South Africa's priorities?
Well, I mean, if you look just at the privatization or bringing in of private players into South Africa's rail network, we've just had the announcement of new rail operators who will be now allowed to have access to the rail lines. We see the fact that exports out of South Africa have shrunk as a consequence of issues related to logistics. And the bringing in of private players and private capital should assist that. So Bigen has been involved in the creation of the Rail Master Plan. And through our transport and logistics service offerings, we see ourselves playing an integral role in that, understanding that the abilities to connect also with our neighboring countries helps South Africa grow its own export within the region.
If we can zoom in a bit more, quite literally, I would like to discuss the SMMEs or small, medium, micro enterprises. How do these types of enterprises also have a role in job creation in the trade economy or the ecosystem as well?
I think SMMEs have become increasingly important in terms of creating new employment. I suppose when we were all growing up, there was always this one huge, giant company, and everybody thought, okay, fine, I would work for this big entity. Employment is now driven more by more smaller businesses in niche areas, employing 4 or 5 people throughout the country. I don't think addressing South Africa's unemployment is going to be left to big corporates to do.
Not
It
at
will
all.
come out of young people looking at innovative ways to fill particular gaps in the market, and the SMME financing and ecosystem becomes critically important. So what we do is we have a method that we engage our small contractors to ensure that we facilitate their participation. So we will map a particular area to know who are the SMMEs that reside in a particular area. We're keen to see, for example, the participation of women-owned infrastructure companies in these projects, because women are not as highly represented in the infrastructure space as one would like them to. We speak with some of the providers of materials to see whether we cannot have contracts with these SMMEs so that they can access inputs, deliver the work, get paid, and service their loans to the providers of these inputs. As a deliberate strategy that we require, we have a process called the contractor participation goal process, wherein we define for main contractors what proportion we would like them to set aside for SMMEs, ideally from the host community, from the wards where they're operating, so that there is opportunities, I think, all around.
Are there any impactful projects that really come to mind in this moment that you have really seen Biggin truly implement some impact and actually doing good in their business?
So Biggin has a number of examples of impactful projects that we've implemented here in South Africa and beyond. I mean, if I look maybe starting with some of our projects outside of South Africa, we've been working with the European Investment Bank at the circular economy in Mombasa in Kenya. Basically, the entire recycling efforts to stop plastic waste flowing into the Indian Ocean.
We need more of that, yeah.
And
the stopping, rather.
Correct. And also decommissioning of dump sites and the construction of new sanitary landfills. But what that does is it creates a huge ecosystem for SMMEs to either be involved in the energy value chains, the waste to energy value chains, or involved in the recycling of plastics to other value-added projects, or deploying technology, for example, to be able to get residents to call private operators to come and pick up their recyclable waste. All of that has created opportunities for new SMMEs to innovate and use waste to value initiatives as a way of generating revenue. In South Africa, we play quite a big part in working with the Construction Industry Development Board to look at how we can partner with them to market SMME opportunities in particular communities. We've recently been working with the government on a large mentorship program for engineers who are recently graduated and are looking at being mentored so that they can become professionally registered engineers. So we take the issue of doing good while doing business quite seriously.
Evidently, yeah.
And we hope to push on with that legacy for many, many more years of the Biggin Group going forward.
That response really does highlight all the good that Biggin really does prioritize in their business. I think from mentorships to caring about the environment, there really isn't anything that I think quite compares to the impact that Biggin is currently doing. This conversation has been rather insightful, very insightful, and I have to thank you so much, Dr. Mtandazo.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I hope we will continue this dialogue on including communities in our projects and ensuring that we factor in their perspectives as we design future infrastructure.
Thank you. Of course, I hope so too. And to you, I hope you've all seen how infrastructure, PPPs, and the government as a whole play a pivotal role in shaping the future economy of our country. Now, if any of you have any more questions, please feel free to check out Biggin's website or even reach out to the team. I've been Lihle, asking you to keep doing good while doing business.